Hello everyone and welcome to the third of Bright Green's interviews with the candidates in this year's Green Party of England and Wales leadership election. Before I go any further, I just want you to do one thing, which is to scroll down and hit that subscribe button. It doesn't cost you a single penny, but what it does do is it means you won't miss out on any of the future interviews we have with other candidates, all the other videos that Bright Green puts out. So hit that subscribe button. It helps us out a massive deal, and it means you won't miss out in the future. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our candidate that we have with us today. I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by Ashley Gunstock. Ashley, how are you doing?
I'm doing fine, thanks, Chris, and I hope you are too.
I'm doing very well. A little bit tired. This is the third one of these that I've done, so feeling a little bit sleepy from the campaign, but I'm sure you're feeling much more so having all the hustings and interviews that you're doing. So I'm going to dive straight in and ask you a question that hopefully will be the easiest one to answer. And that question is, why do you think that you're best placed to lead the Green Party at this time?
Right. Well, in fact, I was looking on Twitter this morning and someone asked, have you actually considered why you, a cis male, would stand for the Green Party? And the answer quite simply is that unfortunately, and I say unfortunately very strongly, the general public find it very, very difficult to see past our two co-leaders. Whenever we put up a co-leadership, it seems that the focus has been split, and the media actually want a figurehead to answer for the parties that they are standing for. And so I felt that we actually needed to simplify the whole thing, the whole process, and that a male, white, cisgender leader was something that the electorate could focus on better. And I also find that the co-candidates that I have are brilliant, and the policies that we all put forward are pretty much the same, because we believe in the agenda of the Green Party. It's just how the public get it delivered to them. And I felt that this election I was best placed.
So just to pick up on that a little bit, so you've talked about how you think the co-leadership model is perhaps confusing for the public and is unhelpful in terms of media. For the last 5 years, the Green Party has been led under a co-leadership team, first by Jonathan Bartley and Caroline Lucas, and then by Jonathan Bartley and Sian Berry. And over that time, the party went from 3 MEPs to 7 MEPs. In 2 separate local elections, we added a huge number of councillors to our tally, doubling our councillors overnight in 2019, and in 2021, adding just shy of 100 councillors to our tally, which is unprecedented electoral success. How do you square the idea that somehow the co-leadership model is undermining the party with that analysis, which would say the party's had unprecedented success under co-leaders?
Because we got to a day and age where it's a black and white issue. I think the way that we promote ourselves is too finely nuanced for the general public to get a grips with. And I'll give you just one example. Caroline Lucas, who is a white cis female, has been seen to be the most successful leader that we've had. And yet, speaking to some people that I know who are, into politics, actually said to me, the leader of the Green Party, it's that Laura Lucas, isn't it? And so even Caroline, who's been the public face of the party for ages, still has not got that traction in. And I believe that, unfortunately, what we need to do is to get someone elected that the public, the electorate, can identify with, and then start nuancing our way in which we present ourselves. I think to do it is somewhat, any other way is somewhat naive, and also perhaps a little bit pretentious, in that it looks like the Green Party are telling people how things should be done in the face of the fact that it's being done and has been done a different way for ages and ages. So I feel that we need to get in there first and then put our nuanced message over. As I've said before, I personally, knowing the Green Party and knowing the agenda, don't mind who leads the party, but the general public do. And that is what we've got to find, the common ground for the general public, who are going to be viewing a single leader and be able to identify with that person as soon as that person is interviewed, as soon as that person is on question time, as soon as Landry Marr interviews them. They need a single focus. So
a lot of our viewers will be relatively unfamiliar with you, Ashley, as a figure in the party. For members who've been around for a while, longer than I have, will remember you from the 2008 leadership election campaign, where you came second to Caroline Lucas. But you haven't had a national profile for most of the intervening sort of 13 years since then. Why did you decide that now was the time for you to re-enter kind of national Green Party politics or central Green Party politics, given your kind of 13 years of absence from that scene?
Right. Well, I actually feel that in some respects that is a benefit, especially given the fact that I am life experienced. I've travelled, I've done different sorts of jobs. I'm a teacher, I'm a football coach, I'm an actor. I've met different people over the years and gained a lot of experience of what it's like out in the community. So mine is more of grassroots based leadership. And I think we still need this bottom-up approach. And the way it looks at the moment is the whole thing with, media profiles. And I go on social media, obviously, and I do Twitter and Facebook and occasionally Instagram. But it's all whistles, bells and lights for me. And I think that the public need to see what it is like for one of them, grassroots, to be the figurehead of the party. That's my basic belief.
I guess the counter to some of that, what you've just said, is we have an election where there's a field of 5 candidates standing. Of those 5, all of them by yourself have a national profile and have done for some time. I don't think it would be uncharitable to say that you didn't enter this race as the favourite. Are you entering into this race to win it, or is there something else that you want to achieve by standing for the leadership?
Well, I wanted to show the spectrum of people within the party. And again, this issue of why do you, a white, cis, middle-class, middle-aged male, feel that you can stand for the party? And it's precisely for that reason that I'm standing for the party. Why not? Again, it's about identity. And there is an identity for people such as me within the party that's unrepresented at the moment. So I put myself forward for that reason. And I felt that we needed to be represented as much as anybody else. And I also find that, yes, the other candidates have got a media profile, but I feel that it's splitting the party. The view of the party is being refracted, and it seems to be antagonistic to me, and that's not what it's about for me. I feel that it needs to be a lot more integrated and thoughtful, and it's not at the moment.
So you said there that you feel like white middle-class men, middle-aged men in particular, are underrepresented in the party, there'll be people who'll be shaking their heads when they hear that, and they'll be thinking our politics is dominated by white men of a certain age, of a certain background, and the idea that you feel that that is a demographic that's underrepresented in the party will appear quite offensive to some people. What would you say to that?
No, I'm not saying white middle class males or females. White middle class people are underrepresented in the party. In fact, that is the basis of the party, is white middle class and often middle aged. What I'm saying is that it, in fact, is that kind of demographic that is going to break through, because we are the ones who can do it better than, not better than. It's frustrating to say better than. It's not what I mean. It would be far better accepted if a white middle class man got up and said, I believe in the principal aims of Black Lives Matter. I believe in the principal aims of Extinction Rebellion. I believe that the Green Party agenda is the only agenda that's going to take us forward, given what all the other parties are offering. And I feel that coming out of the mouth of someone of their own kind, so to speak, is something that they will latch onto better than having a minority group leader getting up and saying the same thing. I hate the fact that I'm saying it, because I believe that anybody of any gender, of any race, of any colour should be able to get up and do what I'm intending to do. And I've got to say, quite honestly, it's far easier for me to do that than it is for someone of a minority group. And it's upsetting to say that, but I have got to break through in order that that will be achievable in the future.
I don't want to dwell on this for too long, but I'm actually quite surprised hearing what you've said. No, I wasn't expecting the interview to go in this direction. But how do you think that people will receive what you've just said? That you think that the voice of a white man is going to be a better voice to have at the leadership of the party than, say, for example, a black woman or a young woman or somebody who's non-binary? How do you think people are going to be responding to that as they're hearing you say that?
Initially, I can understand that they would be upset about it, but I agree with the fact that someone of a different gender, a different race, a different religion should be able to get up and say the things that I want to say for the party. But I just don't feel that the electorate is ready for it. I keep saying it. I think we are running before the electorate can walk. And so we've got to make it simple for them, make that breakthrough, and then say, this is the way we should be doing it. We should be giving everybody an equal chance. I really, honestly do not think that, regardless of what Shara Ali says, for instance, that the electorate are going to accept what he has to say. And I also feel that there's a problem with co-leaders in that the electorate want it simple and they're not getting it simply. They're not actually getting it as they expect to receive it. And that is why I'm standing. Not because I don't believe that other groups shouldn't have a leader to represent them. But I believe truly that, unfortunately, the electorate don't see it that way. We've got to break through and be less nuanced, if you like, a little bit more black and white to get breakthrough and then explain. Because as soon as you're explaining, you are losing. And that is what you have to do. You have to explain why you're doing it differently to the other parties.
I'll just ask two final questions on this point, and then we can move on. But the first question I wanted to put to you is, the Green Party isn't the only political party in the country that has been led by women. There are other parliamentary political parties. The Conservative Party has been led by 2 women. The Liberal Democrats has also had women leaders. The idea that the Green Party is doing something differently by virtue of having women leaders is quite a big claim to make. The other question, and I wanted you to respond to that. And the second question I wanted to put to you is, the Green Party was the first parliamentary party in the country to have a deputy leader of a BME background. It was the first parliamentary political party in the country to have a woman leader handing over to another woman as leader. Now, a lot of people will feel a huge amount of pride that the Green Party was the party that did that. What it sounds to me like you're saying is that actually the Green Party would have been in a better position had it not elected a BME deputy leader and not elected women as leaders. What do you say to that?
No, I mean, first of all, let me say that I am extremely proud of the fact that we don't or didn't have to worry about our lists being gender balanced, because you will find, and it's been so over time, that women have always gravitated to the top in our party, be it Sian Berry, be it Caroline Lucas, be it Jenny Jones, be it Natalie Bennett, be it Jean Lambert, Molly Scott Cato. It just happens because it happens naturally for us, okay? And I think that Caroline Lucas and the people that followed are brilliant. I really do, but they're not being listened to by the electorate. And that is what you have to do. You have to break through to the electorate. There's not enough of us. I mean, given the situation that we are in at the moment, we're right on the cusp of catastrophe. And we have been punching far above our weight. But given the situation, we should be better represented in all stratas of government, and we're not.
I said it would be my final question, but I will ask one more on this before we move on. Beyond your gender, what qualities do you think you have that makes you better placed than all those people you've just listed to represent the party?
Okay. Well, first of all, throughout the hustings so far, I haven't heard of anybody saying anything about us entering into progressive alliances. Now, these are essential if we're to get rid of this Tory government, and we have to, because if we don't, then our chances of meeting the IPCC 50% carbon reduction level by 2030 is just not going to happen. And the only way that we can do that is to get political alliances with other parties who we stand aside for, or who stand aside for us, where we are better placed to get rid of this Tory government. That is a given as far as I'm concerned, and I'm not hearing that from other people. The other thing that I find very, very difficult to cope with is the fact that we are at a vast disadvantage when it comes to the funding of the party at election time. The Brexit Party had 15 times more funds than we did. The Lib Dems had 30. And we cannot hope to gain electoral success by parties having to fight election on the membership capitation, the few donations, and in our case, someone who makes excellent organic jam in order to fund our elections. £500 a shot for constituencies and £1,000 a shot for GLA constituencies in our case is a big amount of money when you don't have the funds to support you. So another thing that I would do is I would insist that we looked for funding from ethical and ecological and socially ethical groups and companies, because we need money. That's bottom line. And then the other thing is like, whereas the National Party last time said we have to stand in every constituency against every candidate, regardless of where it is another thing that cannot be done. If we have to enter into political alliances and we have to cut our suit according to our cloth, and we can still only fight a guerrilla warfare, if you'll forgive the war analogy, in order to make gains. But otherwise we're fighting on all fronts, and it just cannot be sustained. So those are three major things that I would do as a leader of the party and insist on.
So on progressive alliances, at the last general election in 2019, the Green Party entered into an electoral alliance with the Liberal Democrats and Plaid Cymru. There were around 60 seats involved, and the Greens stood down in a lot of them. Off the back of that agreement with those two political parties, the net result was no change. The Liberal Democrats, I think, lost a seat, and I think Plaid Cymru gained a seat. The Greens gained nothing. So a lot of people will be thinking, we've tried the progressive alliance route, we've tried negotiation with other parties, we've tried standing aside, and it didn't get us anywhere. Why do you think that'll be different in the future?
Well, for instance, my own personal experience, we had someone come down from National Party saying to us, you've got to stand in every constituency. And we said, well, we're not going to. We had a vote on it. And we said that we're not going to. And the reason that we weren't going to is because there was one particular constituency where we really needed to get rid of the odious IDS, Ian Duncan Smith, Chingford. And so we stood aside so that the Labour candidate, who was actually a very excellent Labour candidate, I have to concede, could take the seat. Unfortunately, she missed out by about 1,000 votes. Had the Lib Dems stood aside as well, she would have won, and we would have got rid of him. And the same thing happened, but in the opposite way, with Dominic Raab in Esher. Had the Labour Party stood aside, the Lib Dems would have got in, and we wouldn't have had Dominic Raab. And we know what's happened now that we've got Dominic Raab. So we have to enter into these agreements, but with the guarantee that we're going to get something back. And one of the things that we need to get back is a commitment to proportional representation. And that's another thing that I would campaign on. I think we really do need to get proportional representation up front and centre with all the other parties, because the Conservative Party's loving it the way we are at the moment. We are all divided, and because we're all divided, they can rule, and we can see the way in which they're ruling, and it's just got to be got rid of.
But isn't the reality of the situation that with the talk of progressive alliances, the lesson from 2019, the lesson from the Greens standing down in certain seats in 2017, is the only way that a so-called progressive alliance can work in practice is if the Labour Party are on board. And there is no indication whatsoever that the Labour Party are going to enter a mutual agreement with the Greens, with the Lib Dems, with other parties in order to make that work.
Yeah, I'm not talking about a progressive alliance. I'm talking about guaranteed progressive alliances. So we're not talking about going to central Labour office and central Lib Dem office and saying the Greens want to cut a deal with your national parties. We have to cut our suit according to our cloth and go to the people in certain areas that we know are going to be instrumental in us all getting rid of the Tories first, and then laying down a mark of proportional reputation thereafter that we need to be doing at the moment. I really honestly think that we cannot do it alone. Otherwise, we're just a straw in the wind. And at this time, we can't afford to be a straw in the wind. We've got to actually get our agenda on the table with all the other parties. And we can only do that with cooperation. And we're not doing that at the moment.
So I guess putting the Progressive Alliance question aside for one moment, what do you see as your vision and hopes for where the Green Party will be electorally in terms of number of MPs elected, numbers of councillors elected, say in the next 5 years?
Well, I think within the next 5 years, but again, there's another issue that comes up. We've got leadership elections every 2 years, and that's something that I think ought to change. I think that the person or persons who lead the party should have longer, because you're talking about 5 years, and it does need at least 5 years to make these deals and to get us more representation. And it needs to be consistent, and it needs to be coordinated. And if you keep breaking that up with different people coming in with different views and divided views, it's not going to happen. So if we can get on track, I believe that we could get at least another couple of MPs elected, more people on the GLA. And I feel that if we make the breakthroughs, and we don't stand everywhere, we do targeted election campaigning where we know our most successful areas are, and we keep hitting those hard all the time, relentlessly, then I believe that we will crack the nut, and it will be like a dam bursting. I think eventually people will start to get it, but we've got to do it quite quickly. In fact, we've got to do it now. We've got to start now.
So to build that election success, the party would need to compile an electoral coalition of different groups of voters, whether that be different demographics, people in different economic positions, people with different social values. What do you see as the electoral coalition that you think will lead to the Green Party's electoral success, that you think you'll be able to deliver?
Again, you're talking about us aligning ourselves with other parties, and that's not what
No, sorry, just to be clear, what I'm referring to is an electoral coalition of voters. So, for example, the Labour Party's coalition of voters has traditionally, over the sort of 1990s to the 2010s, has been talked about in regards to, northern manual workers, students, people from BME groups, the working class, has been their electoral coalition. Whereas, say, the Tories is based on homeowners, people in the South and so on. What do you see as the Greens' electoral coalition of voters that will lead to that election success that you talked about?
Well, not the one that we've got at the moment, because what we're doing at the moment, we're starting to get a little bit more successful because Jeremy Corbyn was unsuccessful. Had Jeremy Corbyn been successful, then we would be marginalised yet again. And what the radical Labour groups are trying to insist on is having a strong left-wing leader. And when they're not getting it, they're coming to the Greens. But I do not believe that what we have to offer is a preserve of the left. I believe that there are people within all other parties, including the Conservatives, and I'm talking about the Conservatives with a small c, who would vote for us. And in fact, not would, have voted for me. The other night, someone from across the road, who's a Tory, we didn't speak to them for 10 years. Not because they weren't Tories, not because we never had any contact. And then suddenly we struck up conversation. And he was here at my dinner table the other night saying, you know what, we're not a million miles apart, are we? And I said, no, we're not. And I've worked with Conservatives and got things done in the area. And you need to find these people within groups that you wouldn't normally associate yourself with in order to get this demographic. Because the demographic of the Green Party is all-encompassing. Surely what we're trying to do is to get people to see the light, to see what we have to offer, because it is the only way forward that we are going to make a change to avert climate catastrophe. And that is coming, and people are now realizing it with fires in Siberia and floods here, there and everywhere. I mean, you know, I keep saying it, but wake up and smell the carbon to people. And they are starting to, it's dawning on them now. But is it too late? Are we going to be able to get out there in sufficient numbers and really, you know, give it to the electorate and explain to them what they need to do now, not what they want to do, what they need to do now to get us through this, remains to be seen.
So I guess the critique of what you've just described would be that, yes, there are certainly people who are ex-Tory voters or regular Tory voters who vote Green and have done in the past and will do at local elections and so on. But in national elections, the reality is that people are much more likely to vote along their kind of along a line of interest, right? So if you are say a renter, you have fundamentally different interests than a landlord. If you are the boss of a relatively sizable business, you have fundamentally different interests than the workers in that business. And in terms of the Green Party's offer, it's talking about a kind of transformation of society, which is talking about, you know, redistributing power and wealth, and at the same time, reorienting our relationship with the natural world. There are going to be different groups whose interests will be affected in different ways in that. Some people will lose out from that. Some people will benefit from that. So how do you square the circle of trying to appeal to all people, as you kind of describe it, with that reality of how people behave in relation to elections?
Well, it's up to us to get out there and make that kind of thing happen. And again, I've said this quite a few times, you don't get anywhere by just talking to your friends. You have to speak with your enemies. You have to go out there on the stump and actually say to them, look, it's not working this way. Look at the devastation that this government is causing when you're speaking to Tories. How are we going to best get rid of this government when you're talking to people in Labour groups and Liberal groups? And this is the way you gather people who will take to your agenda and vote for you. It's not going to happen overnight, and this is why it has to be a grassroots, not a top-down campaign way of moving forward, because you're not going to do it as you suggested nationally overnight. But if you see that we are making gains in council elections, in regional elections, and starting to push the boundaries in general elections, people are going to want to know. People are going to want to find out why it is that you're being successful at these levels, and what have you got to offer that might take us to the next levels. But to continue the way we are, by continually banging on and saying, well, you know, we're left, you're right, we can't deal with you, let's just keep going the way we've been doing, is like saying, well, it hasn't worked in the past, but let's, you know, do it again. And what I'm offering is something different, a different way of looking at things. And if that is the only thing I achieve by standing for the leadership, then I will consider myself successful, because we've got to do it a different way.
You talked about offering something different and doing things a different way. A related question to that would be, how would you define your political ideology?
Environmentalist. I'm an environmentalist. Everything that I do or try to achieve is by relating it to how it impacts on the environment. And if it impacts negatively on the environment, I don't do it, and I campaign against it. And if it's positive, I promote it. And that's the way I've lived since I've joined the Green Party 32 years ago. That is the way I've done it, because there is no other way forward. And again, you know, I'm speaking to people, and they've said to me, you know, we've known you all this time and you never deviated, have you? You've always kept going. You've always had the green agenda with you, and you've acted all the time as an environmentalist, and you've never wavered. And I'm proud of that. I am truly proud of the fact that people recognise that. And that's what I want to promote.
I've got a few more kind of serious questions before I move on to some more flippant ones towards the end.
Okay.
Before we move on to those, you've talked about this in various ways so far, but where do you think the Green Party is currently going wrong strategically?
Strategically, again, we're not. We're looking at things that we need to do in order to break through, and we're continually dismissing them. Like I'd said, the idea of progressive alliances to get rid of the Tories and then bargain for proportional representation. Too many people are dismissing that. The idea of funding, getting money in from companies, but ecologically and socially ethical ones, is anathema to a lot of Greens. They just won't have it. And again, you know, this idea of a one leader representing us is something that, again, the party is saying, no, we've got, this is the way we need to do it. This is the way we've got to do it to show that we are all inclusive. We've got to get elected. We've got to get elected, and it's not working, you know, the way we are at the moment. And these arguments have been raging for ages. At the beginning, when I first joined, the first conference I had in 1990, the party was cutting itself apart, arguing in front of the media after we'd got a 1989 electoral success, 15% in the European elections. Then later, they argued about Green 2000, about the way forward for the party, and it was balked against. And so we lost more time there. And then there was the argument of the fundies and the realos. I don't know if you've heard of that, but the fundamentalists and the realists. And again, the fundamentalists held sway. And so we lost a little bit more time. We've got to get real. Otherwise, we're not going to get elected.
So you've mentioned there divisions in the party, and the context of this election campaign that's taking place is in the context of divisions in the party. That, I mean, for one thing, this leadership election was never supposed to be happening. It's happened because Jonathan Bartley stood down as leader, as co-leader. Sian Berry said that she wouldn't be standing in this election because she felt there was an inconsistency between the party's policies in favour and support of LGBTIQA plus rights and the appointment of some spokespeople. And throughout the conversation that's happened in this leadership campaign and beforehand, the context that's taking place is there is a problem people have identified with transphobia within the Green Party. As a candidate for leader, what is your assessment of the situation, and how would you tackle the issue of transphobia in the party?
Okay. My assessment of the situation is that debate does need to happen, and we have to have it. But we must have it with compassion, with civility and respect. And that, unfortunately, is not happening. But we also should not have that debate instead of our main goal, our objective. We can have it at the same time, but it shouldn't be instead of. And that, unfortunately, is what's happening at the moment. I have been closer to the trans issue than many people would expect. A white, cis, middle-class, gender male. I've been right there. I actually, as I've said, I'm a teacher. I've actually been in a classroom where there was this young woman who was very, very depressive. She was always depressed, and she was always kicking off and making things difficult for herself and getting kicked out of the classroom or walking out of the classroom. And I didn't see it for a little while, and I moved from within the group that I worked for into working in the Royal London Hospital. And the next time that I saw her, or him, I should say, was in a plaster cast on his leg because she had just decided that she was going to commit suicide and jumped off a bridge and broke her leg. But because she was in an environment that was safe, and we understood that the problem for her was that she wanted to be him, it was totally acceptable. And he was so much happier. And that's so I get it. I totally and utterly get it. But what I'm saying is that has to be promoted by someone who you would least expect to say, I get it. And we have to not just be tolerant, we don't accept, we embrace. We have to embrace it. And that is why I think that I am equipped to deliver.
So at the start of that, you talked about there being a need to have a debate on transphobia and trans rights in the Green Party. The reality is that for the last 6 years, we have been consistently, quote unquote, debating the issue since the party's current policy on trans rights was written, which states very clearly our values when it comes to LGBT rights. There have been since a number of attempts to weaken that position, to change that position. And there have been consistent attempts to do so and to have a quote unquote debate on this issue. Wouldn't you say that we've been spending 6 years talking about trans rights when trans people just want to get on and do all the things you've talked about building the party and saving the planet and everything else? Do you not think it's time for us to move on and for people to accept the party is a party which supports trans people and trans rights and does embrace, as you say, LGBT people?
Yes. Well, but the thing is that there are people within the party who feel that it hasn't been debated enough, and you have to cater for those people within that party. I mean, I would like to get, as leader, I would like to get some people in a room and talk this through myself, because although I said to you I totally get it, I understand it's all about breaking down barriers. It's all about identity in a new age. It's a generational thing. These things do not happen overnight. And you might talk about 6 years as being a long time. That's nothing in the scheme of things. I've told you, 32 years I've been in the party, and I will probably not see the benefits of my work in my lifetime. But that's no reason why I don't keep fighting for it. And I think that other people have got to see that this is not necessarily something that they are going to be able to enjoy in their lifetime, perhaps. And that they've got to be patient with people around them and people who don't understand. And it is a generational thing, and we've got to move with the times. When I say I get it, I understand, you know, why people are so upset about the issue. But for me, for instance, there's an athlete who transed into a woman and took part in the female athletics. Now that person has clearly got a physical advantage. I don't understand how that can be acceptable, yet a friend of mine said he spoke to his children about it, who are quite grown up when I say that. And they said, well, yeah, why not? Well, that's probably the problem, that we have got to die out so that this new generation can take over and actually implement this whole thing. So it's not going to happen overnight. We need to have more care for other people who don't get it. And I have to say that relatively, statistically, you are going to get transphobes. You are going to get people who are misogynistic. You are going to get people who are racist. You are going to get people who are anti-Semitic within this party. And that is a problem that we have to address as well. So it's a possibility you've got to think of. You've got to be covering all bases. As a leader, you've got to understand that there are lots of things out there that you've got to deal with that most people just dismiss and take for granted.
I promised we'd finish on some flippant questions, so I will. I've got a few of them. To kick us off, what's your favourite and least favourite Green Party policy?
My favourite Green Party policy is one that seems to have gone off the table, and that's another thing that I would like to put on the table up front and centre, is a land tax. I think that is one of the things that we need to look strongly into, because there are people who have vast amounts of land that they're sitting on that is just gathering dust and going up in value all the time, and we need to break that. And for instance, you know, the fact that the Duke of Westminster can sit on land and earn vast fortunes and not pay, you know, enough taxes, and you know, the community charges and pays the same community charges is ridiculous. So that's one of the things that I would look into. And my least favourite, my least favourite policy. See, I believe in the agenda. It's difficult. I really do believe in the agenda, and off the top of my head, I don't think I can think of one.
Okay,
maybe as I'd said to you, that we have to have leadership elections every 2 years.
Okay, there we go. Hopefully an easy one. What's your favourite biscuit?
Favourite biscuit? I haven't actually got a sweet tooth, so it would probably be digestive, plain digestive. Plain
digestive, nice and simple. And your favourite pizza topping?
I like all the vegetables that I possibly can get on. Being a vegetarian, all the vegetables that I can possibly get on the top: artichoke, broccoli, asparagus, mushrooms, anything that excites, rocket, anything that excites my taste buds.
Are you a cat person or a dog person?
Cat.
Nice and easy on that one. One just for you. Who's your favourite character from the bill?
I would say Sergeant Cryer.
For anyone who doesn't know, the reason I asked that question to Ashley is because he starred in the bill, I think in the 80s. My favourite would have been Smithy, probably later, but there we are. Crawley cancelled, the bill was. What book has most influenced your politics?
Well, strangely enough, one that I read recently, it's by a man called Dennis Goldberg. He was incarcerated with Nelson Mandela, and he spent 22 years, whereas Nelson Mandela spent 27 years in prison for their beliefs in anti-apartheid. And he wrote the book, A Life for Freedom. And it struck a chord with me because I lived with his family, who had been exiled from South Africa and came to England and lived in London. His wife and daughter and son, and lived with them for quite a few years. So it was on the ground that I got the politics from there. And I read this book, and one of the things, strangely enough, that he quoted Mandela as saying is, I cannot put my whole political ideology into communism. He said, I've got to be broader than that. I've got to see wider. And that has influenced me greatly. And I believe that that's what we've got to do. We've got to look further and wider. And that to stick with one political ideology is folly.
There is an excellent obituary of Dennis Goldberg on Bright Green's website, so I'd recommend any viewers interested in that to go check that out. My final of the flippant questions for you is, who in the Green Party inspires you the most?
Oh, without a doubt, he's no longer with us. Noel Lynch. Noel Lynch was one of the finest men I've ever seen, I've ever met. And it's a great loss to the party that he's gone. And strangely enough, one of our colleagues said, and I didn't know this, he said that he'd hoped that I would stand for the party leadership at one time. And that's another reason why I rushed into it. I wanted to get my name out there for him. So Noel Lynch, rest in peace.
Thank you, Ashley. Now, in these interviews, I normally tend to finish on those flippant questions, but there will be lots of people who will be watching who will have seen the beginning of this interview and will have been, as I was, astonished by some of the things that you were saying.
Yeah.
I've been reflecting on that over the last sort of 50 minutes as we've been talking. I wanted to invite you one last time to reflect on what you said. The implication that I drew from it was that you thought that you were best placed to lead the Green Party because you are a white man. Is that what you're trying to say? And if so, would you like to apologise to members and the Green Party as a whole for making that suggestion?
I didn't say that a white male was the best leader for the Green Party. I was saying that I was best placed as a white male at the moment, at this particular time, to break through, because politically, everywhere you look, they want and they see a white middle-class male, and we've got to break through. And that is one of the reasons why I said what I said. Well, it's the only reason I said what I said. Because I wish it wasn't. I genuinely wish it wasn't the fact that that's the problem. That is part of our problem, but it is. And so help me God, if I did, the first thing I would do is say loud and clear that we need to change this, because it's wrong. It's totally wrong that we've got people like Boris Johnson and Putin and people, in the Eastern European countries, far right, who are starting to come to the fore, and that fool in North Korea, and all these people driving the agenda. They're the wrong people. They're totally the wrong people. We need to get the right people. But what you have to do is play their game, beat them at it, and then make the change. And that is what I'm saying.
Okay, viewers will make up their own minds on what you said, and I'm sure the conversation will continue. But that is all we've got time for today. So I've got a few bits of housekeeping to get through, but before I do, I just want to say thank you, Ashley, for joining us today.
Thank you very, very much, Chris, for having me on the show.
And most importantly, the people that I want to thank most of all is all of you who have been watching this interview and have watched all of Bright Green's interviews so far. As I say, there's a few bits of housekeeping I want to get through, so please don't go away just yet. The first bit of that housekeeping is, I say it at the beginning, I'll say it again, please do scroll down now and hit that subscribe button. It means that you won't miss out on the other interviews we have coming up with other candidates. It also means that future videos that we put out, you'll get straight in your little notifications bit of your phone or your computer or whatever, and in your subscriptions feeds. And it helps Bright Green a great deal too. It doesn't cost you a penny, so please do subscribe. Second, I'm sure there's plenty of things that you have views on in that interview, so please do let us know what you think in the comments section down below. Bright Green is not funded by billionaires. We don't have big money backers. We rely exclusively on the generosity of good people like you. So if you are able to donate, please do head to bright-green.org/donate and set up a regular donation. We ask people to set up a donation of around £5 a month. That's what allows us to do these interviews. It allows us to put out more videos, all the articles we put on the website, our coverage of the Green parties across the UK, the Labour movement, social movements, and the wider left. Whilst you're on the website setting up your donation, you'll also find dozens of other articles related to the leadership election. So if you want to hear more about what the candidates think, what supporters think of them, analysis of those elections, news coverage of what's going on in the campaign, again, head to bright-green.org. And finally, the last thing I want you to do is to make sure, if you are a member of the Green Party, to vote. Voting will open very, very soon. You'll get an email in your inbox. Click the link and vote for the candidate you think is best placed to lead the Green Party. If you're still not sure, there are 2 other interviews on our YouTube channel already, one with Adrian Ramsey and Carla Denyer, one with Amelia Womack and Tamsin Omond, and hopefully we'll have more interviews with the other candidates soon. Apologies for that long ramble at the end. I hope you've enjoyed this interview. I hope you enjoy the rest of Bright Green's content. That's it from me, and I will see you all very, very soon.